let's jump right into this explainer and honestly just completely shatter this illusion we all have of our ancestors' primitive lives. You know the one. Simple cave dwellers just kind of hanging out around a fire. But surviving an environment that is actively literally trying to freeze you to death, that required a level of extreme adaptation that almost sounds impossible to us today. Survival wasn't just about being clever, it was about enduring things that read more like a horror story than history.
I mean, think about it. If you were dropped into the world 20,000 years ago, retaining everything you currently know, but with no natural fur or blubber to protect you, the really uncomfortable truth, you'd probably be dead before the week was over. And that's not because you aren't intelligent, right? It's because intelligence alone just wasn't enough against what was coming. Our human bodies were completely and utterly outmatched. Section 1. The Ice Age Reality. Conditions like Siberia.
Humans are a species that originally evolved in the warmth of Africa. But suddenly we found ourselves trying to survive in conditions that resemble modern-day Siberia. And this wasn't just, one unusually bad winter. This was their entire life, every single year for thousands of years. At the height of the last ice age, massive ice sheets literally buried huge portions of North America, Europe, and Asia. The temperature dropped so unbelievably low that simply walking outdoors unprotected for 10 minutes could kill you. No central heating, no insulated walls. Every single thing that kept our ancestors alive had to be invented, stolen, or entirely stripped from the bodies of other animals.
Section 2. Wearing the dead, skin of predators. So to prevent exposed skin from just dying to frostbite, which by the way, meant blackened fingers, damaged toes, and permanent life-altering injuries in a world with zero hospitals, our ancestors had to strip the hides off dangerous predators like bears just to create a crude barrier against the freezing death. Think about what that actually required for a second. You had to hunt or at least scavenge from a literal apex predator, process its skin, and then sleep in it. And here's the crazy part. After enduring hundreds of thousands of years with these loose, crude hides just kind of draped over their bodies, the invention of a tiny bone needle about 30,000 years ago completely changed human history. A tool small enough to fit right in the palm of your hand was powerful enough to change our entire trajectory as a species. With this simple bone tool, humans could finally sew multiple, tight-fitting layers of reindeer and fox hair. This trapped the heat and blocked out the freezing air. But remember, every single coat or glove meant standing out in the freezing cold for hours, processing a dead animal's skin with stone tools. Honestly, comfort was never even part of the equation. Avoiding a freezing death was the only goal. Section 3. Shelters of mammoth bone. Lack of natural protection. Now, because many Ice Age landscapes completely lacked forests for wood or even natural caves for protection, early humans had to build their homes out of literally the only massive material available to them. Across parts of Eastern Europe, they engineered actual houses by interlocking mammoth ribs and tusks, layering them with hides, and then packing them with earth to block that deadly wind. These weren't just random piles of bones either. They were carefully designed skeletal architecture. They were quite literally building their houses out of giants. Just imagine falling asleep inside one of these structures. The wind is absolutely howling outside, snow is piling up against the walls, and you know the only thing separating you from freezing to death is the rib cage of an animal that once weighed several tons. For our ancestors, this wasn't some kind of nightmare scenario. This was just home.
Section 4. The Hibernation Mystery. Extreme Stress Periods.
Now, at a site in Spain called the Pit of Bones, researchers found evidence of an extreme biological adaptation that takes survival to a completely different level. Some scientists actually propose that our ancestors endured such extreme starvation and stress that their bodies entered a state resembling hibernation, just to survive until spring. Now, while this is still debated, and okay, it's not exactly like a bear sleeping comfortably through the winter, the dramatic slowing of activity and metabolism to conserve every single calorie shows how unimaginably brutal these winters were. The mere fact that scientists are even discussing this reveals the absolute extreme limits of human endurance.
Section 5. Why Neanderthals Vanished. A Vanished Species.
So our closest relatives, the Neanderthals, actually spent hundreds of thousands of years adapting to these extremely cold European climates. But here's the wild part. Despite Neanderthals being physically better suited for the cold in a lot of ways, climate instability and rapidly shrinking food supplies wiped them out entirely. An entire branch of humanity just disappeared from the Earth. Modern humans survived, and Neanderthals didn't, leaving us as the sole surviving species.
Section 6. The Ultimate Survival Tool. Power of Cooperation.
So, you gotta ask, how did our ancestors actually make it through the exact same conditions that completely destroyed an entire other human species? Well, the answer wasn't just a single tool or a warmer coat. Archaeologists have found materials transported hundreds of miles from their origins. In this relentlessly hostile world, vast social networks and cooperation weren't just acts of kindness, They were a mandatory survival strategy. If one group faced starvation, another might step in. This kind of mutual support may very well have been the absolute greatest survival tool early humans ever developed.
When you piece it all together, wearing apex predators, sleeping in mammoth skulls, and forming desperate alliances, it wasn't just primitive cleverness, it was desperation disguised as ingenuity. Every single invention, every alliance, and every biological adaptation was built directly on top of starvation, frostbite, and fear.
The only reason you are warm tonight is because generation after generation of your ancestors absolutely refused to surrender to the ice. They endured conditions that would literally kill most of us in a matter of days. So, remember their brutal, unyielding determination the next time you complain about the cold. Until our next explainer, stay curious and stay warm.